Once upon a time, to buy something, you didn't need money in your pocket. You needed something else to exchange for what you wanted. Imagine you're in a small kingdom in ancient times, and you need some meat. You can't think, I'll work and earn money and then I'll buy meat. Why? Because there was no money yet. Everyone exchanged grain for cloth, meat for rice. Later, beautiful mussels and shiny stones began to be used for these exchanges. But to pay with these, both the buyer and the seller had to believe that the mussel shells were shiny and beautiful. So it wasn't a complete solution. In the 7th century BC, the Lydians living in Anatolia came up with an idea that would eventually influence the whole world. A medium of trade made of precious metals, bearing the king's seal, and acceptable to everyone. This was called money. Certain metals were melted in cauldrons, poured into molds, and the king's seal was stamped on them. Now the first money was ready. But how would the people accept it? After all, everyone was exchanging one need for another, and the system worked well. We had already mentioned earlier that the people used precious metals in shells among themselves. Now, instead of these shells, metal coins bearing the king's seal began to appear. Although they were initially surprised, no one said, "I won't accept this," because it was more reliable for these people. They felt the king's trust thanks to the king's seal. But how would they determine its value? What could be bought with one coin? A cow or a loaf of bread? Things started to get a little confusing. Some were selling their cows for 3 coins. Seeing this, others were saying, "My horse is worth 20 coins. There had to be a limit, and that's where metals came into play. Bronze coins, silver coins, gold coins. And so the system slowly started to work. Cheap things were sold with bronze coins, normally priced products with silver coins, and very, very expensive products with gold coins. But there was still a problem. Would they count them as 1 coin, 2 coins, 3 coins? There weren't the amazing tools we have today. Not all coins were the same. Even from one mold to the next, the value could vary. To solve this problem, the people began weighing the coins. They determined the value based on whether it was 1 gram of silver, 1.5 grams of gold, or 10 grams of bronze. But things slowed down because the process was lengthy. Receiving the money, weighing it, negotiating, and selling the goods. The king noticed this problem and began printing the value of the coins along with his seal. Expressions like 1 gram of gold coin, 3 grams of silver coin, etc. appeared on the coins. Now everything was much faster. Money became the preferred choice for the majority because it had a general value. Barter trade gradually came to an end. No one wanted to receive a few mussel shells in exchange for bread anymore. All the people of Lydia began using money. This innovation also affected neighboring kingdoms. Because merchants traveled to different kingdoms, they encountered money when they visited Lydia, and they were happy with the situation. Thus, the idea of trade with money spread throughout Anatolia. People began to conduct all their transactions with money. The idea of the Lydian kingdom would form the basis of the modern world. Economies, states, and even wars. People now had money,